There is a voice that follows you everywhere. It speaks when you wake up. It speaks when you make mistakes. It speaks when you feel confident, and it speaks even louder when you begin to doubt yourself. Most people spend their entire lives listening to this voice without ever questioning who taught it to speak that way. They accept its criticism as truth, its fear as wisdom, and its limits as reality. But the greatest prison is not built with walls. It is built with words repeated so often that they become your identity. The quality of your life is deeply connected to the quality of your inner conversation. Every thought you repeat is like planting a seed into your own mind. Some seeds grow into peace, courage, and resilience. Others grow into anxiety, self-doubt, and hesitation. The mind does not always distinguish between what is true and what is repeated. It simply becomes what it practices. If your inner dialogue is filled with defeat, your actions will quietly follow. If your inner dialogue is filled with clarity and strength, your life begins to move in a different direction. For just the next 3 days, I invite you to conduct a simple but profound experiment. Do not try to change your entire life. Do not chase perfection. Simply change the way you speak to yourself. Replace judgment with awareness. Replace fear with patience. Replace I can't with I am learning. These small shifts may appear insignificant, but the smallest adjustments in the mind often create the greatest transformations in the spirit. Real strength is not measured by how loudly you speak to the world. It is measured by how gently and truthfully you speak to yourself when no one else is listening. A calm mind creates clear decisions. A compassionate heart creates lasting discipline. When you stop fighting yourself, you discover that much of your suffering was never caused by the world around you. It was created by the conversation within. Today, we will explore how a simple change in your inner dialogue, practiced consistently for only 3 days, can begin to dissolve old habits, quiet unnecessary fear, and awaken a version of yourself that has been waiting beneath years of self-criticism. If you are ready to become your own greatest guide instead of your harshest enemy, stay with me until the end. Because these next few minutes may completely change the way you think, speak, and live. Before you can change your life, you must first become aware of the conversation that is already happening inside you. Most people believe they are thinking freely, yet they spend their days reacting to a voice that has been repeating the same patterns for years. This voice is so familiar that it feels like part of who they are. They no longer recognize it as something they can observe. They mistake it for their identity. Every doubt, every harsh judgment, every fearful prediction quietly shapes the direction of their actions. Without awareness, this process continues unnoticed, and what begins as a thought slowly becomes a habit, then a character, and finally a destiny. The mind has a remarkable ability to repeat whatever it has practiced the most. If you have spent years criticizing yourself, your mind will criticize automatically. If you have spent years expecting failure, your mind will search for reasons why success is impossible. None of this requires conscious effort. It happens because repetition creates familiarity, and familiarity creates comfort, even when that comfort is destructive. The mind often chooses what is familiar over what is beneficial. This is why people remain trapped in cycles they genuinely wish to escape. Observe what happens the moment you make a small mistake. Perhaps you forget something important, speak awkwardly, or fail to meet your own expectations. Before anyone else says a word, your inner voice begins its commentary. It says you should have known better. It tells you that you always make mistakes. It reminds you of past failures, gathering old memories as evidence against you. Within seconds, one small event becomes proof that you are inadequate. Yet the event itself was never the true source of your suffering. The suffering came from the interpretation your mind created. Awareness begins when you stop believing every thought simply because it appears in your mind. A thought is not automatically a fact. A feeling is not automatically reality. The ability to notice your thoughts without immediately accepting them is one of the greatest forms of inner freedom. Imagine sitting beside a river. The water continues to flow, carrying leaves, branches, and reflections across its surface. You do not jump into the river to chase every leaf. You simply watch it pass. Your thoughts deserve the same treatment. They come, they stay for a moment, and they leave. The problem begins when you dive into every thought and allow it to carry you wherever it wishes. Many people spend their entire lives arguing with themselves. They wake up already preparing for imaginary conflicts. They criticize themselves before anyone else has the chance. They replay conversations that happened years ago. They invent future disasters that may never arrive. Their bodies react as though every imagined event is happening in the present moment. Their heart beats faster, their breathing becomes shallow, and tension settles into their shoulders. The body cannot always distinguish between a real danger and a vividly imagined one. This is why an unobserved mind can exhaust a person without any physical struggle at all. When you become aware of your inner voice, something subtle begins to change. You create a small distance between yourself and your thoughts. In that space, you discover choice. Instead of reacting automatically, you begin responding consciously. You notice that your inner critic has appeared, but you do not have to obey it. You hear fear speaking, but you do not have to let it make your decisions. This distance is small at first, almost invisible, but it is enough to interrupt years of unconscious habit. Consider how often your mind labels ordinary experiences. You fail once, and the mind says you are a failure. Someone ignores your message, and the mind decides you are unimportant. A challenge appears, and the mind whispers that you are not capable enough. Notice how quickly one event becomes a permanent identity. The mind loves certainty, even if that certainty is negative. Awareness allows you to question these labels before they become part of your self-image. There is also another voice within you, quieter and calmer. It does not shout. It does not demand attention. It simply observes. This voice is present whenever you notice your breathing, whenever you pause before reacting, whenever you choose patience over impulse. It is not interested in proving your worth because it already understands that your value is not determined by success or failure. The challenge is that this quiet awareness is often drowned out by the louder voice of fear and habit. To hear it again, you must create silence within yourself. Silence is not merely the absence of sound. It is the absence of unnecessary mental noise. Spend a few moments each day without reaching for your phone, without distracting yourself with constant entertainment, without filling every empty space with stimulation. At first, this silence may feel uncomfortable because it reveals the thoughts you have been avoiding. But this discomfort is not your enemy. It is an invitation to understand yourself more deeply. Pay attention to the words you repeat most often. Perhaps you frequently tell yourself that you are tired, overwhelmed, unlucky, or behind everyone else. These statements may seem harmless because they are familiar, but every repeated sentence strengthens a particular belief. The mind listens to your words more carefully than you realize. Every sentence becomes a quiet instruction. If you repeatedly describe yourself as incapable, your behavior slowly begins to reflect that description. Awareness also requires honesty. Do not observe your thoughts only when they are pleasant. Notice the moments of jealousy, impatience, resentment, and fear without pretending they are not there. Denying these emotions does not remove them. Looking at them with calm attention allows them to lose their hidden power. What remains hidden controls you. What is observed begins to transform. Many people believe that confidence means never experiencing self-doubt. In reality, confidence often begins with recognizing self-doubt without allowing it to take control. The courageous person is not free from fearful thoughts. The courageous person simply notices them and continues moving with wisdom rather than surrendering to them. This is why awareness always comes before transformation. You cannot release what you refuse to see. Your inner dialogue influences every relationship you have. If you constantly speak to yourself with contempt, you may unknowingly expect others to do the same. If you believe you are unworthy, compliments feel uncomfortable, opportunities seem suspicious, and genuine kindness becomes difficult to accept. The way you treat yourself quietly shapes the way you interpret the world around you. Notice how often your attention leaves the present moment. While speaking to someone, are you truly listening, or are you preparing your next response? While eating, are you tasting your food, or are you worrying about tomorrow? While walking, are you aware of each step, or are you replaying yesterday's mistakes? The wandering mind often steals the richness of the only moment that actually exists. Awareness gently returns you to where life is happening now. The practice is simple, yet it requires consistency. Throughout the day, pause for a brief moment, ask yourself, what am I saying to myself right now? Do not judge the answer, simply notice it. You may discover patterns that have been guiding your life for years without your permission. You may hear the same criticisms repeated again and again. You may notice fears disguised as practical advice. Each observation weakens the unconscious habit just a little more. As awareness grows, your relationship with yourself begins to soften. You stop treating every mistake as evidence against your worth. You recognize that thoughts are visitors rather than permanent residents. You begin to understand that the mind can be trained just as the body can be trained. Every moment of observation strengthens your ability to remain steady in the midst of emotional storms. Every pause interrupts an old pattern. Every conscious breath reminds you that you are not the voice that constantly judges you, but the quiet presence that has been listening all along. Awareness alone is not enough. Once you begin to notice the words you constantly speak to yourself, the next step is to replace them with language that supports growth instead of feeding fear. This does not mean pretending that every problem has disappeared or convincing yourself that everything is perfect. Real inner strength is not built on false positivity. It is built on honest, calm, and supportive self-talk that helps you move forward instead of keeping you trapped in the same emotional patterns. Many people believe that being hard on themselves is the reason they succeed. They think self-criticism creates discipline. They assume that if they stop judging themselves, they will become lazy or careless. But observe your own experience. Has years of harsh self-talk truly brought you lasting peace? Has constant criticism made you fearless? More often, it creates hesitation. It fills the mind with anxiety before every challenge. Instead of encouraging action, it convinces you that you are never ready, never enough, and never capable. Imagine speaking to a close friend who is struggling. If they made a mistake, would you tell them they are worthless? Would you remind them of every failure they have ever experienced? Would you insist that they should stop trying because they failed once? Most likely, you would not. You would encourage them. You would remind them that mistakes are temporary and that they have the ability to improve. Yet, when the same situation happens to you, your inner voice often becomes cruel. The compassion you freely offer others is withheld from yourself. This difference reveals an important truth. Your inner dialogue is not based on fairness. It is based on habit. Somewhere along the way, many people learned that criticizing themselves was a form of responsibility. They confused punishment with improvement. But punishment rarely inspires lasting change. It usually creates fear. A fearful mind avoids challenges because every mistake feels like another opportunity for self-attack. Supportive self-talk is not about lowering your standards. It is about changing the method by which you reach them. Instead of saying, "I always fail," you might say, "This attempt did not go as planned, but I can learn from it." The situation has not changed. Only the interpretation has changed. Yet this small adjustment completely changes the emotional energy available for your next decision. Words influence your body as much as your mind. Think about the difference between hearing someone say, "You are hopeless," and hearing someone say, "You are capable of learning." Both sentences enter through the ears, but they create entirely different physical responses. One tightens the body, the other opens it. Your own words create the same effect every single day. The body is always listening to the conversation taking place within you. Notice how often your thoughts include absolute language. You say, "I never get anything right. I always mess things up. Nothing ever works for me." These words sound convincing because they are dramatic, but they are rarely true. One mistake becomes always. One disappointment becomes never. The mind exaggerates because exaggeration strengthens emotional reactions. Calm self-talk gently returns you to reality. Instead of asking, "Why am I like this?" ask, "What can I learn from this?" The first question searches for flaws in your identity. The second searches for opportunities to grow. One creates shame, the other creates curiosity. Curiosity is one of the healthiest states of mind because it keeps the heart open while allowing the mind to remain flexible. When something difficult happens, pause before speaking to yourself. There is often a brief moment between the event and your interpretation of it. Most people miss this moment because they react automatically. But if you can slow down, even for a single breath, you gain the opportunity to choose different words. This small pause becomes the doorway through which wisdom enters. Supportive self-talk also requires patience. Human beings often demand immediate perfection from themselves. They expect years of habits to disappear after a few days of effort. When progress is slower than expected, they become frustrated and begin criticizing themselves again. Ironically, they judge themselves for not becoming less judgmental fast enough. This creates another cycle of unnecessary suffering. Growth is rarely dramatic. It is usually quiet. One calmer response today, one less critical thought tomorrow, one deeper breath during a stressful moment. These changes may appear insignificant, yet they gradually reshape your inner world. Just as water slowly smooths rough stone through continuous flow, gentle words repeated consistently transform the character of the mind. There will be moments when you fall back into old patterns. Perhaps you become angry with yourself after making another mistake. Perhaps fear returns before an important opportunity. Do not criticize yourself for having these thoughts. Instead, notice them with kindness. Even your setbacks deserve compassion. Every time you recognize an old habit with becoming trapped inside it, you are already making progress. The goal is not to eliminate every negative thought. The human mind naturally produces countless thoughts every day. Some are useful, others are not. The practice is learning which thoughts deserve your attention. You do not have to believe every sentence your mind creates. You can listen carefully, acknowledge what is present, and then consciously choose a wiser response. Language also shapes identity. If every morning begins with complaints about yourself, you reinforce an image of weakness before the day has even begun. But if you begin with quiet reminders such as, "I will meet today with patience," or "I can handle challenges one step at a time," you prepare your mind differently. These are not magical affirmations. They are intentional directions. They tell your attention where to focus. Supportive self-talk becomes especially important during failure. Success often makes kind words easy. Failure reveals the quality of your relationship with yourself. Anyone can feel confident when everything goes according to plan. True inner stability appears when life becomes uncertain. In those moments, your own voice becomes your closest companion. If that companion only criticizes, every challenge feels heavier than it truly is. If that companion encourages with honesty, even difficult situations become easier to navigate. Pay attention to the tone of your inner voice. Sometimes the words themselves are not especially negative, but the tone is impatient, demanding, or sarcastic. Imagine carrying such a person beside you every hour of every day. It would become exhausting. Yet many people unknowingly carry this voice within themselves. Learning to soften the tone is just as important as changing the words. A calm inner voice creates calm decisions. When panic speaks, choices become rushed. When shame speaks, opportunities are ignored. When fear speaks, possibilities become invisible. But when patience speaks, the mind becomes clear enough to recognize solutions that anxiety could never see. Clarity is one of the greatest gifts of a peaceful inner dialogue. There is also strength in forgiving yourself. Many people continue punishing themselves for mistakes that happened years ago. They replay old memories as though constant regret will somehow rewrite the past. It never does. The past cannot be changed, but your relationship with it can. Every moment spent attacking yourself for yesterday is a moment stolen from today's opportunity to grow. Treat your mind as you would a young tree. If you constantly strike it, it grows twisted and fragile. If you care for it with consistency, patience, and firmness, it develops deep roots capable of withstanding strong winds. Kindness is not weakness, it is nourishment. Discipline without compassion becomes harshness. Compassion without discipline becomes comfort without growth. Real transformation happens when both exist together. As you continue replacing self-criticism with calm and supportive words, you begin noticing subtle changes. Challenges no longer feel like personal attacks. Mistakes become lessons rather than verdicts. Progress becomes more important than perfection. The voice within gradually changes from an enemy that drains your energy into a quiet guide that reminds you to stand up once more, breathe with awareness, learn without shame, and continue walking with steady purpose. Change does not require a lifetime to begin. It requires a single moment repeated with sincerity. Many people delay transformation because they imagine it must be dramatic. They believe they need a completely new environment, endless motivation, or a perfect plan before they can become a different person. But the mind does not change through occasional moments of inspiration. It changes through consistent repetition. This is why even 3 days of intentional inner dialogue can begin to reshape the direction of your life. 3 days may not create perfection, but they are enough to interrupt an old pattern and introduce a new one. The human mind is constantly learning from repetition. Every thought you entertain repeatedly becomes easier to think again. Every emotion you revisit becomes more familiar. Every sentence you speak to yourself strengthens a particular pathway within your awareness. Whether these pathways lead toward peace or anxiety depends on what you practice most often. The mind does not reward good intentions. It responds to repeated experience. Imagine walking across a field covered with tall grass. The first time you cross it, every step requires effort. The grass resists you, and the path is difficult to see. But if you walk the same route every day, the grass slowly bends, and eventually a clear trail appears. Your thoughts work the same way. Years of self-criticism have created well-worn paths in your mind. They feel natural because they have been traveled thousands of times. Choosing supportive thoughts may feel uncomfortable at first because you are creating a new path. The discomfort is not a sign that the practice is wrong. It is evidence that something unfamiliar is beginning. This is why the commitment of 3 days matters. It is short enough that your mind cannot easily reject it as impossible, yet long enough to reveal patterns you may never have noticed before. Instead of promising to change forever, simply commit to observing and guiding your inner dialogue for the next 72 hours. Small promises are easier to honor than impossible expectation. Begin your morning with intention. Before reaching for your phone, before checking messages, before allowing the outside world to fill your attention, take a quiet moment to notice your first thoughts. Many people begin the day already worrying about unfinished tasks or expecting problems that have not yet appeared. Instead, pause and choose your first words carefully. Tell yourself that today is an opportunity to practice awareness. Remind yourself that your value is not determined by what happens today. Set the direction of your mind before the world attempts to set it for you. Throughout the day, treat every challenge as an opportunity to practice rather than a reason to give up. If someone criticizes you, observe your immediate reaction. Notice the impulse to attack yourself before anyone else can. Then gently interrupt it. Ask yourself whether the criticism contains something useful to learn. If it does, learn from it without destroying your confidence. If it does not, let it pass without allowing it to define you. There will be moments when you forget. Hours may pass before you realize that you have been speaking harshly to yourself again. Do not see this as failure. The very moment you notice is already success. Awareness has returned. Every return strengthens your ability to wake up from unconscious thinking. Every interruption weakens an old habit that once controlled you without resistance. Consistency does not mean perfection. It means returning again and again, no matter how many times your attention wanders. Think about learning to play a musical instrument. No one expects mastery after a few attempts. Every mistake teaches the hands where to move next. The same principle applies to your inner dialogue. Every time you notice an unhelpful thought and replace it with a calmer one, you are practicing a new mental skill. Your environment also influences the conversation within your mind. Pay attention to what you consume during these 3 days. The words you read, the voices you listen to, the conversations you engage in, and the content you watch all become part of your mental landscape. If your surroundings constantly reinforce fear, anger, comparison, or negativity, maintaining peaceful self-talk becomes more difficult. Protect your attention with the same care you would protect something precious, because your attention determines what grows inside you. Silence becomes an important companion during this practice. Spend a few minutes each day without music, without distractions, and without constant stimulation. Sit quietly and simply observe your breathing. You may discover how restless the mind has become. Thoughts will appear without invitation. Some will encourage you, others will criticize you. Do not fight them. Let them rise and fade naturally, while your attention gently returns to the breath. This simple exercise reminds you that thoughts are temporary visitors rather than permanent rulers. Another powerful practice is to pause whenever you notice emotional discomfort. Instead of immediately distracting yourself, ask a simple question. What am I telling myself right now? Often, the emotion is not created by the event itself, but by the story surrounding it. Two people can experience the same situation and respond completely differently, because their inner conversations are different. Change the story, and you begin changing the emotional experience. Gratitude also transforms inner dialogue, not because it ignores difficulty, but because it widens your perspective. A mind focused only on what is missing eventually believes that life is nothing but lack. A grateful mind still recognizes challenges, yet it also notices blessings that were previously overlooked. During these 3 days, intentionally acknowledge small moments of goodness. A peaceful morning, a meaningful conversation, a lesson learned through difficulty, a quiet breath. These simple observations gently train the mind to recognize abundance instead of constant deficiency. Be patient with resistance. Your old patterns may argue against every new thought you choose. They may whisper that this practice is pointless or unrealistic. Understand that resistance often appears whenever genuine change begins. The familiar mind protects its habits because they feel safe, even when they produce suffering. Continue practicing without arguing with every doubtful thought. You do not need to win a debate inside your mind. You only need to continue choosing wisely. Notice how your body responds as your inner dialogue becomes calmer, your breathing slows, your shoulders soften, your face relaxes, your movements become less hurried. The body reflects the state of the mind. When your inner world becomes less hostile, your outer behavior naturally becomes more balanced. People may even notice a quiet confidence within you before you recognize it yourself. This practice is not about becoming someone else. It is about removing the unnecessary weight that has been covering who you already are. Beneath years of self-judgment, comparison, fear, and criticism exists a quieter presence that has never disappeared. It has simply been ignored. Every supportive thought, every mindful pause, every compassionate response clears away another layer of noise until this deeper awareness becomes easier to recognize. As the third day approaches, you may notice something subtle. The harsh inner voice still appears, but it no longer controls every decision. There is now another voice beside it, calm, steady, and patient. It reminds you to breathe before reacting. It encourages you to continue instead of quitting. It speaks with honesty instead of shame. This voice grows stronger each time you choose to listen. Do not stop simply because the 3 days have ended. The purpose of these days is not to complete a challenge, but to discover what is possible when you intentionally guide your inner conversation. Every sunrise offers another opportunity to continue. Every difficult moment becomes another chance to practice. Every mistake becomes another invitation to respond with wisdom instead of judgment. The person you become tomorrow is quietly being shaped by the words you choose today, by the thoughts you repeat this hour, by the attention you offer this moment, and by the willingness to return again and again to a mind that speaks with clarity, patience, compassion, and unwavering purpose. If there is one lesson to carry with you today, let it be this. The most important conversation you will ever have is the one no one else can hear. Every word you whisper to yourself is shaping your future. Every thought you repeat is becoming a belief. Every belief is influencing your choices, and your choices are quietly creating the life you experience. For the next 3 days, make a promise to yourself. Become aware of your inner voice. Refuse to feed it with unnecessary criticism. Replace harsh judgment with calm honesty. When you stumble, encourage yourself to rise instead of convincing yourself to stay down. You do not need to become perfect. You only need to become conscious of the words that are guiding your life. Remember, true transformation rarely begins with changing the world around you. It begins with changing the voice within you. A peaceful mind creates steady actions. Steady actions create lasting habits. Lasting habits create a powerful character. And a powerful character creates a meaningful life. If this message spoke to your heart, take a moment to share it with someone who may need these words today. Leave a comment below and tell me one sentence you will begin saying to yourself over the next 3 days. I would love to read your commitment. And if you're ready for more teachings on inner discipline, mental clarity, and lasting self-mastery, subscribe to the channel and join this journey with us. Until next time, guard your mind, choose your words with wisdom, and remember that the life you build tomorrow begins with the voice you choose to believe today.